Hello, everybody, and this is Stacy from The Advisor. Today, I'm very excited because we have Bernadette Thompson, and she is an amazing woman. She is a certified genealogist. She works with people that have trauma and also people that are going through end-of-life grief. And she does a lot more than that. There is a lot to tell about Bernadette, and she's gonna, because she is so connected to the mind, body, and spirit, and she does so much for so many people. I'm going to let Bernadette tell you a little about herself and what she does, and it's going to be very interested. So open your ears and listen carefully because you're going to be really, really, really interested in what she has to say. So Bernadette, tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Stacy. Well, first of all, I'm so excited and happy to be here with you and your listeners. And I'm the owner of Tell Me Our Story, Genealogy and Ancestral Healing. So my background is that I am a genealogist. I've been a genealogist for over 15, getting close to 20 years that I've been doing genealogy. But I've also been trained where I've worked with students, children that have had trauma, and also have so done a lot of work and a lot of training with them for 13 years in a middle school with sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. So, and I am also someone that has worked in with the senior side of the elder care management side. And so I am actually a certified end of life doula. And so I help people. I understand what grief and trauma looks like in someone when they are experiencing it. And I began my career, as I said, as a genealogist over 15 years ago. But bringing it all together, it was actually going through the trauma and grief of losing my husband myself that I began to realize the deep connection that we have with our ancestors. And so my background kind of all came together. I've been researching and understanding how to find the stories and the documents that tell us our family story. And then also realizing that as we begin to do that, that the connection, the deep connection that we have with them brings us a tremendous amount of healing. And I would bring, as I worked with people and was helping them go through their family story and what they were uncovering, I could see the healing beginning. And I understood that this was more than just knowing the names of the family members on your tree and being able to know whether you went back to the Mayflower or that your ancestors came from Spain or just but also to truly start to begin to know that our ancestors are our family and that we are a descendant from them and that they when they came, the lives that they led, they had us in mind. They were living lives hoping to better for the next generation and the next generation.
Right.
And we know now that as they were going through their lives, that they did experience trauma. And science tells us that those trauma experiences cause responses in our bodies like anxiety or just difficulty with relationships. And those things get passed down to us. And so I began to help people understand as they learned what their ancestors had gone through, they began to see how that was part of who they were today. And that was what helped them to begin the healing process.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I've always been interested in genealogy, and when you really get in touch with the spiritual world, and has that always been a gift for you since you were younger, or is it something that evolved later on in life?
That's an awesome question. If you had asked me that, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I might have said, well, maybe a little bit, but I now look back and see the progression
Yeah.
that I always had this curiosity. It sometimes shows up as just an interest in history, and
Yeah.
you're interested in family. But as I look back, I was seeking and seeking not only ancestral, looking for my ancestors, but I was seeking spiritually as well, and they are often very connected. So it is, I would, as your listeners are sitting here, I'm sure some of them are looking back saying, I've done that too. I didn't know that that's really what I was doing.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
you said that when you connect with the spiritual world, there are lots of different ways that you can connect. And then some people don't even realize, but they're getting connections from the spiritual world, from their ancestries or people close to them that were here that passed, and they may not even know it.
Absolutely. There is, if I use my personal story just to help people understand, one, I had a deep connection about wanting to know about my ancestors. So that was a way of just beginning the opening. But it was as I went through the trauma of my husband passed away from alcoholism. So
Mhm.
it was a difficult passing for him and for our family.
Yeah,
And as I was understanding the emotions of going through that, I began to realize how deeply connected I was with my ancestors. And I shared a little bit about this with you before, but as when you open up, when you begin to understand and know the ancestors, they start to come to you. You begin to feel a connection and know them. You know them as individuals. You understand their lives. We have
yeah,
so many, and each one of them has lived a different life. And we often get connected to a few of them that are personally really looking out for us, and they're, I would say, it would be our spiritual guides that are close by us. But when I was struggling with the challenges of someone who was struggling with an addiction, my
yeah.
ancestors came in and surrounded me. And I was sharing earlier that I grew up Catholic. And I had learned to say the rosary, but I'm not going to church a lot right now and hadn't been.
Mhm.
But I had heard someone talk about actually it was John Edward, the medium, saying how he used the rosary as a way of meditation. So as I was struggling and going through what I was going through, I started to use that. And I imagined my ancestors around me, helping me go through this challenging period of time. And I had this one experience. There's a spiritual experience, and it's called the visitation. It feels like a dream it happens when you are asleep. And you think some people will wake up and say, oh, I just had a dream about my grandfather or somebody that had passed away.
Yeah,
And sometimes that's true, but in many cases, it's a visitation. And the visitation is when they come and they really are connecting one to one with you in that dream. And so my great aunt, who happened to be a nun, Sister Lou, she was amazing, a lot of fun. She came to me in this dream, and she held my hands. We were in a room together. It was had a golden hue to it, and
mhm,
she was holding. I'm looking all around, and she's holding on to my hands, and she makes me look her straight in the eye, and she says, "We hear your prayers." And and then I woke up, and I knew from that moment that I was not alone on this journey,
yeah,
that they were with me and they were surrounding me, helping me through this very challenging time that
yeah,
I was going through. And I share that because I want your listeners to know that when they discover that their ancestors are with them, they are surrounded all the time, even now.
yeah.
Even if they don't know who they are, their ancestors are close by them. And so I had that connection. And a little while later, I had, as continuing on this rosary theme, I'm all Irish. My maiden name is O'Brien. All roads lead to Ireland. And when I remember this time, it was really, really challenging. I was very concerned about my husband and how he wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
And I was saying the rosary in the evening, and all of a sudden, the rosary started coming through me in an Irish brogue. And I knew that one of my ancestors, one of my great grandmothers, was coming through and speaking the rosary, telling me that she was here with me, or they were all here
Yeah.
every time I said the rosary. So it is this connection with them that one lets us know that ancestrally that they are here.
Yeah.
And as you begin to look into, as I discover stories and the documents that our ancestors have left us as
Yeah.
kind of a path
Yeah.
to help find it. It's like the breadcrumbs in Hansel and Gretel, that they're there for us to
Yeah.
look back and see where what their path was. They draw in closer, and it really helps us to understand and know that we are part of something that's greater than us.
Yeah.
And it helps us feel connected spiritually to the other side, even if that's something that we aren't quite sure we believe in, or
Right.
that we want to believe in, but we may be feeling like, I feel like I need something concrete. So as we look at our ancestors and you begin to feel what I call as spirit chills,
Yeah.
where you kind of feel that feeling like somebody has just put their fingers on you,
Yeah.
and it's a very light, beautiful touch that makes you understand that there is spirit close by and loving you and supporting you, and helping you in whatever it's going through. So on that side.
When you do genealogy and you start to see your ancestry, how do you know which ones might be close to you? Is there a certain feeling you get? Like you just talked about being touched, like you feel like they're touching you. Is there, for people,
Mhm.
how do they feel that? That
It is so it's so fascinating. Often when I do a family tree for somebody, because or if I'm working, if someone has done it and I'm just looking at it and helping, spirit will help me understand. They will give me a connection. So when you start to look at your ancestors, you start out with, your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents. It
Mhm.
grows very quickly.
Yeah.
So as we kind of go through each limb of your tree, you will start to feel a connection. Either you feel the connection because it was an important part of your life growing up, or you suddenly feel a connection because, I'll give you an example. I was working with somebody, and their great grandfather had been a doctor, a field doctor in the Civil War. And they were in the medical field, and no one else in their family had been in the medical field. And when I discovered that for them, all of a sudden they realized that that's where this was coming from that for
Right.
them. And so sometimes it is that type of a connection, connecting with an ancestor that they didn't understand that they had
Yeah.
a connection with them. And sometimes it is the connection, that a strong connection that has always been there. And that ancestor, who they may remember or they may not, they is there telling them, we're here, I'm watching you, I'm helping you, I'm understanding what you're going through, and I want you to know that you're going to be okay.
Right.
So that's where a lot of it, that's where a lot of the connection comes from.
It's funny you say that because I had spoken to someone who was a spiritualist, and they had told me that my grandmother was watching over me and that she watches over me a lot. And she had passed when my father was 18. So I have never met her, don't know her, but I was told that she's always with me. And I found that very interesting because I've never met her before, but supposedly she is always around me and she's always watching over me.
Yeah.
So,
And interestingly about that, that's when, sometimes I look back for that ancestor, yeah, and see what was the life, what did she grow up, how did she grow up, what was going on in her life,
yeah,
and maybe, what kind of challenges did she have, and sometimes even in that you say, oh, this is why she's so close to me, or she had a special connection with your parent or your, and so there
yeah,
you see why they are especially connected with you.
right.
And it is so incredibly helpful to know and ways that you connect. I was just thinking about this when my husband passed away. The ancestors definitely came in to help me understand. And
Yeah,
one of the ways that they came through it was music. Like I would hear songs. Sometimes it would be song that I might hear on the radio. And that's a
yeah,
common thing people will say when you hear that. That definitely can be a sign from somebody. But also the sign can be a song that comes into your head
yeah,
that and you sometimes aren't sure why. So I had this great uncle. His name was Uncle Bob, and I started getting this. Billy Joel's "The Piano Man"
yeah,
kept coming into my head, and because the work I do, I knew it was somebody trying to connect with me.
right,
And I couldn't figure out who it was. And suddenly I realized this was my great uncle Bob who played the piano.
right.
And we always would go to his house and he played by ear. He never read music. And he had a little bit of a professional career, but he would always play the polka. And we were little, we would dance the polka around his living room.
Yeah,
And that was his sign to me that he was with me. He was the piano man. And even today, sometimes I will get the piano man coming through, but I know that it is him
right.
that's coming through. And my husband comes through in song, and in I'll have songs coming through, or numbers is a way
Yeah,
of knowing. I can tell you another little story about
yeah,
when he passed. I was taking I had a client in the car with me, had to go on a long drive and put some music on so that we could have something. And in my head, I was a playlist of mine. And in my head, I was saying, oh, play some of our songs, trying to talk
yeah,
to him, in heaven.
right.
And the whole ride's going on and other songs are playing. And I'm like, really? You're not playing? And then a song came on, but it was a song that I was like, that song. I don't really like that song,
Yeah,
but I still had it on my playlist. And then at the end of I got the client to where they were supposed to be. And now I'm headed home and I'm thinking about the grocery store. And I was stopped at a stoplight. And all of a sudden, one of the songs that was incredibly special to us
yeah,
came on the radio and not, on my playlist.
yeah, yeah.
And it was Landslide, Stevie Nicks' Landslide. And
Aw,
so it was, just had this feeling. But another sign for him is also he passed on 11/1/17. So 1117 is a sign.
yeah.
So when I was stopped at that stoplight, that song came on and the license plate in front of me was 1117.
Oh, wow.
So our spirit, are those who have passed, whether they're ancestors or whether they're a special close someone that has passed away, whether it's a relative or a friend, or your spouse or whomever, even a
Yeah,
child, that they will come through and bring you something so that they're always with you, so
right.
that and that they're okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's amazing. I know a lot of people are into the numbers and they like 1111 or they have 555 or they think 444. And,
Mhm.
what's your beliefs on the numbers and
Mm. My belief, numbers are definitely a way that they want to communicate. Spirit wants to communicate with us in any way that they can. And so it is numbers. A lot of people talk about butterflies and cardinals, but there are many ways that you can connect with them. My mom happens to be a yellow wrangler.
Mhm.
It's a long story, but a yellow wrangler was associated with her. And when I see it, and even my children, I remember when my son was came off the lacrosse field, had just scored the winning goal in an overtime, a semifinal game.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said to me, "Did you see the yellow Wrangler in the parking lot?"
Mhm.
So they show up. So signs can be numbers. They can be things like as a butterfly or as any type of bird or a crow or a cardinal, but they
Yeah.
can also be something that just reminds you of them.
Right.
So I want people to know that signs do not have to be something so specific that you discount everything else that shows up in front of you.
Right.
So if you see suddenly their favorite song or their favorite TV show or something comes up and you think of them, but
Yeah.
it's not a sign, you feel like I've never had a sign from them. Those are signs. When
Right.
you get that feeling that of seeing them and missing them, you are bringing them in. And they were whether they were the ones that were coming around trying to bother you so you could
Yeah.
know that they were there, or whether that just brought them in,
Yeah.
they are with you. And I just encourage anyone who is struggling or going through a difficult time, to always call them in, that we are surrounded with help. We can look to our ancestors to see we see the trauma that they went through. And I want to talk a little bit about the trauma where our ancestors did go through things. Many went through war or famine. My
Yeah.
ancestors went through famine, the Irish famine,
Mhm.
and those struggles cause reactions, as I had said earlier, in our bodies, and those are passed down to us. But
Mhm.
we also see that the triumphs that they made it through that story,
Yeah.
and they were resilient enough, and we are an example of their resiliency. We are
Right.
here and we are living the lives that we are living because they came through. When
Yes.
we look at it, at all of the things, war and trauma, famine and the traumas that went on, and all the things that could have prevent us
Yeah.
from coming in this embodiment to
Right.
be who we are today, we're lucky,
Yeah.
that we made it.
Yeah. Oh, for
So,
sure.
and I also wanted to share again about trauma, that when we go through a traumatic experience, and many of us, we feel the trauma is passed down, and that means that we may have overreactions to things. We may have increased anxiety. That's often one that people will
Yeah.
talk about, the increased anxiety, to a circumstance that doesn't need that much anxiety.
Right.
I try and use the example of, anxiety, or that fear was given to us. So when we saw a bear in the woods, we knew
Yeah.
should be, but that we sometimes have that reaction to a bear in the woods when it's something that doesn't call for that.
Right.
So that trauma, so we're experiencing that trauma.
Yeah.
But then on our own lives, what I went through, going through the illness that my husband, his struggle with addiction, and how
Mhm.
that affected us and the family, was
Right.
also was trauma.
Yeah.
And I just want them to understand that, knowing that, going through their ancestry, ancestral healing is, it can heal the trauma that we have today.
Yeah.
We can heal what we were passed down
Right.
when we look back and understand that that wasn't ours
Yes.
and that we don't have to hold on to that.
Right.
But we can also begin to heal our trauma,
Exactly.
the trauma that we've experienced.
I feel it's so important, to be able to connect and to be able to really dig deep into our inner self and to be able to connect with our inner self. Because a lot of times I feel like our spiritual world is trying to talk to us in many ways. And especially if we are able to connect with our inner selves, the answers are there. They're trying to guide us. They're trying to give us the answers. They're trying to lead us in the direction that will be more helpful to us. And it's being able to really close off the outside world, our earth, and being able to really focus on the spiritual world and to focus on us and inside us and what we need. Because, the spiritual world talks to us, but we also our intuition, everything, it plays a whole role. And if we listen to what our cells need, the answers are always there. And is there any exercises or any ways that you suggest that you feel would be beneficial for people to start really connecting with themselves, with the spiritual world, and being able to understand what their body is telling them and the guidance that their body or in the spiritual world is giving them?
Yes. When I began to open up more to the spiritual side, and it's interesting because while I've always had a spiritual side, it was looking into the ancestors that began to break that open and bring it to the forefront. The sitting quietly, understanding you don't have to be in a deep meditation in order to receive spiritual guidance. And I think sometimes people are anxious about that because
Yeah,
we feel like I can't, when I start to meditate, I think of how am I going to pick the kids up, and I have to go to the grocery store, and what are we going to have for dinner?
yeah,
Or somebody's sick in the family and I've got to go check on grandma, or, all of those things come in and start to worry us during that time.
yeah,
And I would say the best, meditating is good, but meditating is good just to learn how to calm your body.
yeah,
So to try and do it and not worry that you are connecting with the other realm or connecting, just do it to um, those deep breathing, even, start with 5 minutes of just calm breathing. And if you need music, just calm music, play calm music
yeah.
just begin to allow yourself to settle.
Right.
And then the side of talking with spirit is that you don't have to be in that meditative state.
Yeah.
That often, if you just allow yourself, just talk to them, say,
Mhm.
I'm struggling, and ask for somebody to show you the way. Ask them
Yeah.
for a sign that will bring you joy. So you know that if you're saying, I need to feel some joy, or ask for a sign of something that will feel very grounding.
Yeah.
When we walk in nature, it's a very grounding, when sometimes when I walk in the woods, I'll feel the leaves on the
Yeah.
trees, just to know that there is spiritual energy all around us.
Yes.
And as we talked about earlier, that we are energy and we are part of a bigger energy,
Mhm.
all leading back to source energy
Yeah.
where we're all a part of that. And when we don't have to, it doesn't have to all happen at once.
Right.
I think that sometimes people want to feel connected and they
Yeah.
want to be connected to spirit and they want that guidance, and they feel like it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I would say whatever, if, for example, re-listening to a podcast like this or another podcast where it has them thinking
Yeah.
about spirit and reminding them that there is, that we do have the connection and that it is open to them,
Yes.
because it's open to everyone.
Hmm. It
Oh.
is. I hear so many times people will come to me and they'll say, I haven't heard from my mother in a while. I don't feel, I don't feel her presence around. I miss her, and what would you say to someone like that?
I would say there are a number of ways. One is sitting and just talking with her,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's yelling at her or it's crying with her.
Yeah.
It doesn't, they're still there. I always say that when my parents passed, I'm one of 8 children, that I had more attention from them when they passed than I get
Yeah.
their undivided attention. So
Right.
I would say that. I would also say, sometimes going through pictures, sometimes just looking back at your life, and that's where going back and looking at your ancestry can be. If you know some things, if there's a special chair that was your mom's special chair or your grandmother's special chair, go
Right.
sit in it, because their energy is all around you.
Yeah.
And I think the mistake is looking for that one sign, that it's only going to be the sign of the cardinal that's going to be outside, or
Right.
the butterfly, or that special song. Like, I haven't heard that special song in a while.
Yeah.
So I would say is allow themselves to be open. And the other thing I was saying is, you can call them in by saying, I need to give you a couple of signs, because I
Yeah.
don't see cardinals very much
Right.
here. Or, I just moved from Vermont. In Vermont, there's not a lot of butterflies in
Right.
the winter. Or so if butterflies are your sign,
Yeah.
it's hard. So I encourage you to look for, or ask them for other sides. I said that my mom was a yellow Wrangler. At
Yeah.
one point with my dad, a lot of things, he was a Yankees fan. He was that, there were a lot of New York connections that I knew that was him.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that all the time. And so I finally said to him, I said, Dad, I'm going to make you a red Wrangler, because I need to know that you are around me. And so I would see red Wranglers the way I would see yellow Wranglers. And I
Yeah.
knew, so you can do that and help foster the connection.
Right.
So, and I think I would also want to share that we have our ancestors and we have our family. And then above them, is there are spiritual beings that are around us as
Yes.
well.
Hmm.
And that we sometimes connect with the spiritual beings who may not seem like ancestors. They can be angels, they
Yeah.
can be other types of spiritual beings. And I want you to know that they are there too, along with our ancestors and our family.
Hmm.
And, as I shared earlier, I often do try and bring people through by connecting with those that are closer to them, to open them up so that they know that we are connected to the other side. That is a very thin veil.
Yeah.
But it's okay to take a little while to open to that
Right.
and to understand it, and to have the doubt
Yes.
that I'm not sure. And so it's harder for me to believe, because I need things that are a little more concrete.
Right.
You know.
If you have angels and you have angel guides and you have others watching over us, do they give similar signs, or do they give different types of signs, or are they watching over and they help certain things come along or guide through our way, but they never say anything? Is it different between each of them, each of them?
I would say yes, there it's different in the way that you would, like with my dad, I was saying a Yankees
Yeah.
thing. So an
Hmm.
angel wouldn't come through with that reference, but an
Yeah.
angel may come through, or a spiritual being may come through with the number signs.
Right.
As I was growing, they were using a lot of number signs with me. So a lot
Mhm.
of 111s, 333s, and some people will say, oh, you have to see three of them. If you see two and you feel like it can be a two, like there are, numerology does have a very specific,
Yeah.
and if you are very connected with numerology, then your signs are going to be very specific
Right.
to numerology. So if you are studying a certain type of um, methodology, your signs will be connected to that. But
Right.
if you're kind of a regular person that hasn't yet chosen, or just kind of is open to understanding, I want you to be open to different types of signs.
Hmm.
And as you will eventually differentiate between what is family and what is a higher
Hmm.
being, and we all have both.
Right.
We all are guided by both, and as I said before, as when we experience a difficult time, that sometimes is what starts to break it open for us, because we are feeling so in need of help and in
Right.
need of guidance, and to allow yourself to be open to that.
Right. There are people who say that their spiritual guide has a name. They know what the name is. For some, they may not have the ability to connect in that sense. What's your intake on that?
My intake, I have a spiritual guide that came to me. They started, and I wasn't thinking about talking about this side, but it started using a pendulum, and I'm not a big fan of using that, but it
Yeah.
was just it was experimenting somebody, and they chose that way to come to me, and eventually I came across a name that we kind of agreed on, that was their name.
Hmm.
And it isn't necessarily, they don't necessarily have a name.
Yeah.
Or if it's a name, it might be something that we didn't understand. And it took quite a long time before I was able to really feel that I was connected. It grew. They didn't come in like, one day they weren't here and the next day they were here.
Yeah.
So I would say, if you feel like there's somebody there most likely is somebody there.
Right.
And you can begin to talk with them. One way is to ask yes and no questions,
Hmm.
because it's easier to get a response. You can ask them, can you tell me what a yes sign would feel like? And
Yeah.
maybe a yes sign is a spirit chill,
Right.
and a no sign is just none.
Right.
And so if you're asking something, they'll give you a spiritual. And if you don't get that, but again, it is, want them to understand that it's a process.
Hmm.
And we are all, as many beings, just even if we think of humans, the billions of humans on the planet,
Yeah.
we all connect a little bit differently.
Right.
And I don't want anybody to feel that they are not connecting because they don't have the same sign as somebody else.
Right. They all
And the
have.
same, yeah, we all have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had to give a few takeaways of everything we discussed today, what would be some things you'd like to emphasize that you feel are important?
I would say, to begin the journey, if they're wanting to know more, if they are interested in connecting with their ancestors, to begin to to go down that, as a genealogist, people who didn't expect a emotional ancestral connection were surprised when that's what came through.
Yeah.
So in one sense, I would suggest that to do that. And obviously, Tell Me Our Story, genealogy and ancestral healing. I do offer a 30-minute free session if people wanted to go and do that. But just even aside from that, going through and looking through if they have a family tree, starting to connect, thinking about the things that have been left from other family members, or if they have a story of their ancestors. And then I would say also, as that begins to open up, to also on the other side allow the spiritual side to come in,
Mhm.
to understand grief. As one of the things I help people go through is the grieving process, understanding the mind, body, and spirit connection
Yeah.
of grief. And so if someone is grieving, to allow that also to open up. So I would say just begin to say, I want to open, and begin to think about opening on the ancestral side,
Mhm.
and then begin, as I said earlier. So the rosary helped me open up, and it
Mhm.
was just, I hadn't touched a rosary. I literally used my fingers when
Yeah.
I first. So if it is something else, anybody of a different faith, it doesn't have to be, this is not about a religion. It's
Right.
not about any religion. It's about our own spiritual connection. And to choose, sometimes just holding on to something can
Yeah.
help them begin a spiritual connection. So I would say purposefully think about wanting to connect,
Right.
and setting some time aside to begin to have that conversation. And it doesn't have to be with a candle, with sitting in a
Yeah.
yoga position, but all of that is good if that's what works for you.
Right.
So it's beginning to choose your own. And and I would love to, if anyone had a question, I would love to talk with them and share a little bit more, because I also not only do the genealogy side, but I do the ancestral healing side, and can help people to begin that journey as well.
Right. And where can people find you? What's your website's name?
It is Tell Me Our Story. Tellmeourstory.com. And I say, to remind people, it is the story, the name came from the child asking the parent to tell me our story. How did I get here
Yeah.
and to become who I am? So it's tellmeourstory.com. And I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. And but Tell Me Our Story. And if you go to the website, there's a download to help you get started, a free download to help you get started on looking at your ancestry. And um, there's a free 30-minute session. And I have now I have to go and look one. I have a free 10% off that I will share with you if I can. Let me
We could
think.
always put in the description box also for people.
Okay. All right. So I will do that. Let me just quickly look at it. I apologize.
That's
It's,
okay.
it's always when so advisor 10 is what the code is, what the coupon is. So ADVISOR 10 for 10% off on my services, which is both doing ancestry, and also the grieving, the mind, body, and spirit connection, which is opening up to spirit as well.
Oh, I love it. I love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for coming on the show. I truly love everything that all the information that you have given us today. It just it resonates so well, and you really touched my heart in so many ways. And I look forward to hoping that you come on the show again, and that we can go deeper into a lot of these topics that we discussed today. Because I think it's
Yes.
very important to learn how to connect with the spiritual world. I think it's very important to understand how to connect with ourselves, because once we
Mhm.
understand how to connect with ourselves, I feel like we can connect with this spiritual world a lot easier. And then if we are able to open ourselves up to the spiritual world, it's such a beautiful world because there's so much out there that you don't even realize that's
Mhm.
out there. And there's so
Yes.
many connections that can be made and so much good advice and direction that you can be open to if you just open yourself up to the spiritual world. And there's so many ways of doing it, and there's so many benefits to actually doing it. And I always believe that when people pass, like we talked about previously, our physical being may disintegrate, but the energies always live on and they're always with us. And they may go somewhere for a little while and come back, but if you call, they will answer, they'll come back. And they're always there to protect us, watch over us, give us signs, give us love. It's just that we can't see them the way we did when we were in the present tense of life, but they're always here. It's just we have
Mhm.
to open ourselves. And there was, when you were talking, I remember it was a couple of years back, someone had sent me a book. I wish I could remember the title, but she talked about her son passing away. And she mentioned that she had a better relationship when her son passed than she did in the present because she was a lot closer and he shared so many things with her after he passed and crossed over. And there are many stories like that, and people like you could help people connect and really understand those type of things that are going on in their lives and connect with the trauma and the grief and understand
Mm.
what's going on in their life and understand how to overcome, because I think that's a big thing too, is that we could become more spiritually connected when we overcome the trauma and when we let go of
Mhm.
that negativity and that negative energy as well.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better, Stacy. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to come on and share this with you and with your audience, and just, open the conversation needs to just keep happening because
Yes.
it is so healing for so many people to know that there's help, and
Yes,
to not judge themselves if they feel like they haven't made that connection yet. It doesn't mean you can't.
exactly. Exactly. Oh, thank you so much, Bernadette, for coming on this show. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I look forward to coming back again sometime.
Yes, me too. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.